I've got, I think it's probably better because I want to get off the stage quickly and answer some questions. I've got remarks that if left to my own devices, I'd probably go way over time. So I'm going to keep this short, sweet, simple. But thanks, Crash. Thanks, Dr. Eagle, and good morning to everyone. I'm assuming that Dr. DeGraff will join us as well. So
he's online.
Okay, good morning to Dr. DeGraff. I'd like to start out by thanking Air University, MGM Works, the Innovatrium, and really all of the folks who are providing meaningful training, experience, and context to this cohort. But especially coming from my role as Air War College Commandant, preceded and followed by wing commands, where I understand how hard it is to give up talent for a period of time, but how important it is to get that investment back, especially an investment that is different than reading material online. To go in person and soak it up and to develop the relationships that will expand over time is an investment that wing commanders can rarely afford, but when they can afford it, pays back in big ways. So I'd like to thank your leadership teams, whoever they are and wherever they are, for letting you be here as well. And as you're being challenged with some issues that are near and dear to my heart from my previous AOR, I'm excited for this opportunity to meet with you early in this jumpstart. And I'm very happy to see the swath or read about the swath of experience, the cross-section of theaters, the backgrounds, the perspectives and spheres of influence that is represented in this group. And I think that diversity will serve this team that you build well, and that will in turn serve your units, your commands, and your AORs as well. But I urge you to take advantage of this time to not just kind of soak up innovation juxtaposed up against ACE, but to also take the time to really build your contacts, build both across the cohort and across the program to include speakers, coaches, mentors, and influencers. And so what I'd like to do is start things off with a few minutes of my perspective on Agile Combat Employment. And ACE's intersection with innovation, my thoughts on ACE misconceptions, and maybe a few techniques or guidelines that I used as a senior leader to build, that really kind of, that built my perspective that I held as a forward posture wing, and allowed it to do its part to advance the Agile Combat Employment concept and build an agile, and this is important, I think, to build an agile, innovative, and multi-capable culture. And hopefully, and maybe that will inspire a few questions today. Hopefully I can answer them. But more importantly, I hope it will make you question taking an ACE concept on doctrinal face value and consider the reality of application from a frontline operational commander's perspective. And hopefully it will also help you find places where you can easily and quickly make a difference with the work that you're doing in this cohort, during this cohort and beyond. And I will, again, I'll make myself available if any of you want to have a bar napkin conversation as you grapple with your thoughts on this evolving concept. So, Crash, I appreciate the intro. What I'd like to do is just give you a quick summary of how I view my bio and my career. I graduated from the Air Force Academy at the end of the Cold War and started flying F-16s, training to a peer-to-peer threat that I grew up with knowing of Russia, but actually the Soviet Union. And then I spent the next 2 decades transitioning from my focus to the Middle East, training for and fighting the global war on terror and battling violent extremism, where air superiority, air power, providing decisive effects, providing pristine C2 or having pristine C2, and decisive capabilities advantages, all those things, they were a given. And so operationally and tactically, the 90s, the 2000s, early 2010s, they were extremely successful for our military. But I would argue that era of success, which really led into the last few years of my career, didn't result in long-term service health. In fact, I think that our forces have a lot of very deliberate, well-funded, and focused hard work ahead to develop the muscles that we need in order to be successful in deterring and or fighting and winning the next conflict. And I think there are really three reasons for that decline in our strength and our lethality. First, and this, you're no strangers to this, lack of funding. For whole of nation reasons too numerous to count, we haven't funded new platforms or infrastructure. Second, we strained our force. Deployments and streamlined services placed huge demands on our operational forces, making them do more with less, popular phrase, and ultimately placing enormous constraints on their time. They were and remain tired. And third, I believe that we were victims of our own success. Why adapt, improve, or innovate when you're tired, underfunded, progress is hard, operations are reckless, and you're winning anyway? It doesn't really set up well for an innovative culture. And I also believe, especially after being here as the Air War College Commandant, that there's a natural tension between innovation and operations, especially in the military. They don't pay operational commanders for innovation. There are very few places outside of AETC and AFMC where you find budgeted innovation programs over the long term. Innovators thrive on excitement, and operators are tired. And I began really realizing this as a senior leader. As a Vice Wing Commander at Luke Air Force Base, our focus was transitioning training from F-16s to F-35s. There was plenty of ways that we trained that needed change, processes for information exchange that needed significant improvement, new technology that needed to be harnessed, and existing technology that needed to be reimagined. But we were funded to fly and fix the F-16 in order to graduate fighter pilots and build hangars and training facilities for on-time arrival of F-35s. We were not funded necessarily for process improvement. I was the wing commander following that at Kunsan. Optimizing targeting and weapons solutions for an increasingly active North Korea theater should have been a significant priority. But I was manned to a very junior experience level, and funding barely kept our mission-capable rates in the air to train to our current plan. As Air War College Commandant, I tried to energize our team to connect curriculum and programs across Air University coming out of 2 decades of the global war on terror to really reinvest in the 2018 National Defense Strategy. And we needed to move away from combating violent extremism and operations in the Middle East and towards a renewed focus on peer and near-peer competitors. And in this role, for me, innovation was building a new Air Force Fellow position that thought new ways about China or how we were going to combat the things that were pressing to the NDS, or designing and funding a new seminar to be the seed corn for Space Force senior professional military education. But what I was paid for, and I was graded to do, was putting warfighters, commanders, and senior staff members back into the Air Force and our Joint Force, who remembered the lessons learned from facing the existential threat, that knew how to organize training, equipment, and air power competition, and who saw the urgency to address the need to innovate and prepare for the coming conflict with maybe Russia, but most especially China. So I left for my wing command at Anderson and my assignment to the 36th Wing, acutely aware of our Air Force's need to reinvent itself for a fight with a pacing threat. And that Anderson Air Force Base, with its strategic location and massive runway, ramp, fuel, and weapons storage infrastructure, that would provide a great litmus test on how any sort of reinvention across our Air Force could take place. And when the excited innovator in me got on a plane out of Seattle, flew 5 hours just to overfly Hawaii, and then another 7 hours to get to Guam, land, and realized I was 3 to 6 hours away from China, Korea, Japan, Australia, even the Philippines, and anything closer than that was even more austere than Guam. which, I don't know if you know this, doesn't even have a Walmart. All right, so it is in the middle of nowhere. It is austere. When I stepped off that plane, my excitement waned, and the tired operator stepped onto a tired airfield with failing infrastructure, and at the onset of COVID, 0 tails on me. Literally, I came from commands at Kunsan and Luke with hundreds of aircraft at times, and there was 0 aircraft day one as I stepped off the plane. Anderson Air Force Base, though, has a long history of projecting air power from Guam, and although Anderson has always had to face the tyranny of distance to support resupply and logistics, the base has resourced, flew, and projected air power relatively uncontested for the better part of the last 7 decades. So I entered my assignments at Guam knowing that we'd been historically underfunded. We had a small, tired, and inexperienced force, and we hadn't had the time, the money, or the necessity to truly adapt or innovate. And my challenge was even greater because over the last 2 decades, while we were underfunding, Russia and especially China were investing in new technologies and military training and integration as well as basing solutions, first island chain, that would put our forward basing and operations in the Pacific at risk. Anderson and PACF were not innovating for the next conflict. The conflict, which I think we all now know, will be with a peer adversary in a contested environment, fought across multiple domains from multiple axes. But we've got a plan for that, right? Yeah. I was tired, but not defeated. Let's get excited about our plan. And let's get some innovative ways in which we can improve the posture to meet that plan. And it was deflating day number 2 when I got the top secret operational plan brief of forces and basing required to fight the high-end fight. So I needed some excitement to restore my innovative soul. Enter Agile Combat Employment. I became an advocate because ACE, in my view, at its core, is about unlocking the potential in people, expecting more out of them, and watching them lead in dynamic environments. So ultimately, I'm a staunch advocate. But ACE, as most of you know, conceptually, got off to a slow start. It has a bit of a boring background. PACF has long realized how difficult it is to project power across multiple domains from multiple axes at a huge AOR. The austere and remote environments offered as basing and projection platforms to senior planners have resulted in such concepts as adaptive basing, agile logistics, flexible combat operations, just to name a few, and for those of you who've roamed around a while, you've probably heard of most of those. In 2017, as many of you are aware, the Air Force folded in what we now call ACE, Agile Combat Employment, into its overall concept of operations. And despite maturing through the realities of budget limitations and O-plan disconnects, and although evolving through trial and error during small and large force scale exercises, doctrinally, ACE has remained largely unchanged for many years. And the Air Force, you guys will go over this in many ways if you haven't already. The Air Force describes ACE really as utilizing a hub and spoke network of permanent, well-established hubs and more remote austere spokes enabled by multi-capable airmen, pre-positioned equipment, agile airlift to rapidly deploy, disperse, and maneuver combat capability throughout the theater. So, paired with aircraft fueling, refueling, arming, and limited maintenance activities, ACE really expands the number of bases from which the Air Force can generate combat, logistics, CADR, and other sources, air power. And really that just provides multiple options, expands our access for power projection, and this is important, complicates our enemy's target problem. And I'm powered by the CSAF's excitement over this concept. As you may recall, the CSAF General Brown, as PACF Commander General Brown, basically said that when done right, ACE allows our air forces to pick up and move operations at any time. That means we can deploy to attack from positions of advantage and hopefully scramble for survivability and reconstitute to continue the attack. He goes on as CSAF to describe ACE as a key operating concept for how the Air Force will fight in a modern contested environment. And he highlights agility, posture, or he did at the time, agility, posture, projection, JADC2 as the key capabilities that enable ACE. And as General Brown gets ready to take on the chairman's role, I don't think that his position is going to change. I also think he's going to appreciate that even if we get closer to right across the Air Force, ACE is compounded in its complexity across the Joint Force. Now there's some new terms in Air Force doctrine, and they may have changed since I retired a few months ago, but really the Air Force has just tried to provide common language with our joint and even coalition partners. And doctrine now basically says that there are 5 core elements of ACE, which include posture, protection, C2, which General Brown had already highlighted. It kind of replaces his thought on agility with maneuver and sustainment. At least that's what it was as of the end of 21 and 22 as I was leaving command. And as a 36th Wing Commander at Anderson Air Force Base, I was not funded against those concepts real time, but I was excited about it. So how I decided to get at that problem was to get our team together and restate our mission, retool our airmen, and take advantage of our unique forward geography and our special mission contingency response group. Personnel, our equipment, our skill sets, and our relationships throughout the region, as well as leverage our regional partnerships, and the one constant that we knew was going to come through with excitement and funding all of its own, our planned exercises, which I looked at as real-time, phase whatever operations. They had to. Why waste money if they are not? They served as a tremendous message while training of where we might be, both to encourage our allies and to discourage our adversaries. I put as many airmen and family as I could in harm's way by painting the threat and tying the importance of their daily jobs and showing them that their success and even survival in this theater depended on how prepared that they were. And really, this was just done to make them ask, why am I here on this remote island? And force us, as their leadership, to answer that question and build their sense of purpose, which unlocked, in my view, our asymmetric advantage, our individual airmen. So to talk quickly about what we did at Anderson to get after ACE, I would like to highlight 2 of the 4 priorities that we developed. And priorities, for those of you who are getting ready to step into wing level positions, are as important as anything that you have. You talk about your mission, talk about your vision, and you start with those, but you will never get close to achieving those if you don't establish priorities, because priorities are what you fund. They are where you put your resources, your time, your money, and your talent. All right? So first, I'd like to talk about a couple of our priorities, and those really were operationalizing the base and designing and developing multi-capable airmen. First, operationalizing the base. Within this priority, I nested all of the efforts that optimized and prepared the wing to support current and future operations. And that could range from designing and executing a new support contract for vehicle maintenance, to rewriting our joint memorandum agreement that, with the Navy and Marine Corps to gain fiscal control and operational flexibility over supply, lodging, services, maintenance, etc. It included upgrading and improving comms infrastructure to enable future exercises and new operational concepts. Anything from ACMI to data link to new fiber networks. It included facilitating the relocation of 5,000 3rd MEF Marines to support CD-22 aircraft training from our North Ramp. And remove them from operations in Japan. And more relevant to the ACE discussion, this priority includes operationalizing ACE, especially through innovation and integration of Air Force's joint coalition exercises and connecting them to Air Force and joint operating concepts, like ACE. So starting in the 2020, during Valiant Shield, we really got after a few of PACAF's ACE tenets, highlighted by their efforts to tackle ACE agility and ACE posture. And agility to us, especially in a peer conflict, really required flexibility and challenging traditional operating norms developed in a predominantly permissive environment. For us, this meant operating from an austere location, receiving fuel in an unconventional or expeditionary manner, or rearming in a different airframe. And during that exercise, that first exercise, we executed 3 F-22 integrated combat terms on a simulated austere airfield, which included the first ever 5th generation refueling and first ever hot refueling from C-130J aerial bulk refueling delivery system, or ADFIDS, along with the first ever hot-to-hot refueling operations, allowing for expedited terms. That doesn't seem all that complicated or all that hard to do. But bringing in the forces who had never done it before, and especially coordinating the risk and buying off on new risks to do something you hadn't previously done, as hard as it was for our airmen to do that in an austere environment, even simulated at the time, the work it took ahead of time to take risks that our senior leaders were predominantly unwilling to take was a huge shift in our mindset. We follow this in future exercises with similar operations in actual remote runways across austere environments. Runways carved in the jungle with no lighting, minimal markings, no distance remaining markers, no permanent airfield control, and extremely limited ramp space. Again, this is not what they pay Anderson Air Force Base commander for. For many years, my job was just keeping the airfield lights on. The runway in good condition, providing robust refueling capability at our main airfield, and conduct safe airlift, air refueling, bomber, an occasional O&E, and exercise flying operations. But we had to take fiscal risk to build new remote basing options, and my hat's off for the operational risk that the operation group commanders of the units that came in and flew those high-risk, high-visibility stories. We integrated other airframes, including F-35s, F-16s, F-18s, and F-15Es. We integrated Japan, Australia, and other countries into the ACE exercises. We decreased our footprint. We increased the resupply rates, and we increased the length of the operations and the deployment, and we degraded comms. We started our simulating resupply, and then we actually flew C-130 sorties provided needed resupply. We integrated pre-positioned material, including bulk fuel bladders and pumps. Our contingency response squadron provided airfield control. We had multiple airmen support, Red Horse installment of multiple mobile aircraft arresting systems, provided mobile TAC ends, and built expeditionary weather and airfield repair capabilities and deployed comms. We did it without a planned funding stream. We did it by innovatively targeting and planning for exercises that were coming in and finding monies through exercise channels to be able to say, this is how we can support the exercise. But it was only worthwhile for me planning for the long term if those exercises left behind residue more than the training that left. I needed some sort of infrastructure, some sort of a relationship to be able to stand the test of time and not just be temporary. And we got good at a lot of these on a very small scale for a very short duration over the 2 years that I was there. Success, every one of these things we did looked like a first ever. So, when you read my OPR, my PRF, or my deck leaving there, man, it seems like we were doing great things. But I will tell you, we failed miserably at scale and duration. All right, I won't say we failed because we were never really tested. We just, we didn't have an answer or a solution for that necessarily. We struggled with scale. During one exercise, I had 41 C-130s on the ramp supporting agile logistics and resupply efforts for our spoke operations out at a remote And when we had a COVID case at one of those islands, and the island leadership, the local government, needed us to get that person off island, otherwise he was going to shut down his support of any of the operations and our access into that location. We need to get that person out of there. And it's great having these high visibility exercises as the wing commander out of Guam, because of course General Lisbach, AFB commander, is going to be over my left shoulder telling me exactly how to do these and manage the relationships that we're in every day. And he said, this is easy. Got four C-130s on the ramp. Send a C-130 up there. Super easy. Yeah, one of them's broke. One of them's doing airfields, refueling, operations to Palau. And the two others were bought and paid for an exercise that the Army was conducting at Anderson concurrently. So I couldn't use them. So ultimately, I ended up scheduling and paying for commercial airlift at great expense to go do something that we should have just been able to do with the training school. But scale, even that small scale, is going to be a beast. All right. And failure even at a fairly small scale, to me, that just seemed ridiculous. But I will tell you, the hardest part when I say we don't fund ACE is we're funding exercises. We're blending ACE across our exercises. But even exercises are hard to fund. And the infrastructure and the backbone of the long-term plan, the bases, hubs, mobs are designed. You don't see that necessarily in our operational funding. And I don't foresee that getting any better in the Pacific region with the budget talks going on in the Hill and our continued support for other programs, including relevant voices that are talking about operations needed in Europe, especially construction right now. And I'm not saying those aren't important. I'm not saying that PACAF is more important. I will say that where you sit at the time is usually most important, and you will find that you're never going to get enough money to do the things you want. The second point that we really kind of pulled out was ACE posture. And posture, in my terms, is one of the most important things that we've got the ability to affect. In my terms, it is how we set the theater, especially in a contested environment. And proper setting in the theater for ACE operations is characterized by only needing a runway, a ramp, a fuel source, munitions, food, and ready source of multi-capable airmen, underpinned by the relationships that allow access to all of these things when needed in order to operate at multiple locations in the theater. And the 36th Wing was responsible for the second island chain portion of this objective. And although we're not truly funded for setting the theater, especially initially, we're increasingly responsible for setting the conditions that allowed for successful posturing within certain second island chain locations, especially before major exercises, and leaving behind infrastructure, training, and operational and diplomatic residue that would help set the theater for future real-world contingency operations. So 5 minutes. Okay. And just a few things that I thought I'd highlight. We partnered with CNMI and FSM governments to utilize and operationalize runways and built Northwest Field, which serves our primary training location, Palau, Tinian, and Saipan, led by the efforts of our contingency response airmen and the heels of relationships of real-world contingency response efforts. We increased subject matter expertise exchanges, developed security agreements and innovative sourcing solutions with local island companies, governments, and landowners. With respect to tentative posture across the second island chain, the Air Force's strength was that the 36 Wings' relational standing in the region was strong. Success relied on our unique understanding of the local environment, climate, corrosion, available aggregate, local workforce, political requirements, seasonal weather patterns. In short, ACE was very specific. It was not as is read in doctrine. However, with posture 2, our weakness ended up being scale. In this case, though, we really started building great muscle memory, especially within the PACAF staff, that started aggressively pursuing immediate infrastructure improvement and scale. at a few locations across the second island chain, and I won't get into that. But I will talk a little quickly about our second priority that I highlighted, which was designing and developing multi-capable airmen, because this is where I think that you can make the most of your it is also the thing that will refill your buckets when all this fails. And by far, the key enabling concept that I'm most excited about is that of multi-capable airmen, or MCA. And I mentioned MCA a couple times throughout our other ACE advancement efforts, but the 36th Wing truly led the way in fleshing out the MCA concept. Early in my tenure, PACAF appointed the 36th Wing, specifically the 36th CRG, to take the lead in the development of the syllabi to build MCA, with specific tools required to support ACE in the theater. So as I was excited to take the lead for PACAF, and in many ways for the Air Force. And as I mentioned before, I established designing and developing multi-capable airmen as a priority, so that we would not only fund resources for our talent there, but really meant that we'd focus on how we could incorporate it more, if not all, airmen into the fight. And a lot of wings, I know I've talked about this a lot, and a lot of other areas are doing great things with this concept, and I'm sure it's evolved greatly since I left command, but MCA is more than just providing guns and training to AFSCs other than our defenders. That is not MCA. What we were focused on at Anderson is actual USAF accredited training and qualifications across multiple AFSCs that enable flexibility to minimize footprints during operations, especially in a contested environment. Two of our already established courses in Dragon Forge, which trains in-depth field craft hospital and covers a wide range of security force operations, like convoy, combat, self-aid buddy care, etc., and ECAC, or evade, capture, and conduct, are both accredited training that each regionally ACE-approved multi-capable airman will go through. And that training is currently called Basic Airman Readiness and Basic Deployment Training. And really is a mindset shift at theater, back to the fight the base and how to reconstitute a main operating base. Quickly, Tier 1 provides airmen to augment Boss High in support of main operating bases. Tier 2, which should be in the future for all PACAF airmen, is advanced expeditionary skills, and they're 5 levels or higher that will move forward to a forward operating base or hub, skilled in field craft evasion and conduct after capture, and familiar with rapid damage repair. They are plug-and-play airmen that support Boss High at C2 and are familiar with mission generation support the hub. And then lastly, Tier 3, which is a PACAF-specific airman with unique advanced mission generation skills, 7 levels and higher, expected to operate small teams independently from a temporary location for 72 hours without resupply or backfill. And they're really there to establish a forward air refueling and rearming point. We were excited about taking that leadership role, not just because we got to develop those syllabi, but we got to use our team of airmen across a bunch of different skill sets to develop what an optimal set of skill sets would look like in our theater for those types of roles. And so as I left my tenure at the 36th Wing, I was most optimistic about our progress with designing and developing those types of airmen. I believe that when we build multi-capable airmen to maximize their potential impact, and better yet, when it maximizes their ability to design and influence their own multi-capable role, that airman who understands their role, that airman who knows why their role is important, that airman who feels listened to and valued, that airman will do 3 things. They will look for greater responsibilities and a way to make a bigger impact. They will work outside of duty hours because it fulfills them, and they will put their talents and expertise on display, which is often in the form of innovation. A fulfilled airman is a force multiplier who is rarely tired and can help you to overcome almost any budget shortfall. Did I have 1 more minute? Sure. All right. I'm going to offer myself after you guys finish this first part. If you got any questions for me, and then afterwards, if you want to come talk to me. But I just wanted to wrap up by telling you what I believe about ACE that I don't think you'll find anywhere in doctrine. 1, ACE isn't truly funded, so to do it, you have to make it fun. All right, and that means minimize distractions, prioritize combat generation, and celebrate contributions. All right, 2, despite having a detailed doctrinal definitions and specific components, ACE is not standard. It is not one size fits all, but you can wear it. in any situation. And what I mean by this is the concept may be valid, but success is in the details and in the knowledge and skill set of the expert. Commands should listen to subordinate commanders. Commanders should listen to their airmen. Listen to, empower, and equip your airmen. And 3, if you can't scale the concept, scale the culture. You can't predict or resource every ACE need, but an agile, innovative culture can get you close. All right, and lastly, I'll just say that there are many ACE naysayers out there, as there are advocates, probably more, because ACE does not solve many, if any, of our shortfalls to our O plans. But I believe it is a step in the right direction. I have yet to hear a better alternative, and I believe, if nothing else, it restores our services' innovative soul. So I probably don't have time for any questions, but I'll stick around for some.
Here's what we're going to do. What's the first rule that I told you all today?
Everyone has to write.
Everybody writes. You have 60 seconds. You can get through as many of these as you can. What was the most valuable thing you heard? What was the most problematic thing you heard? What's the biggest opportunity? Where did you hear about momentum that you might be able to capture? And then once everybody has spent a minute writing something down, turn to a partner. I'll hold opportunities for 1 or 2 questions from each from the room.
Saturday, but so you do get paid to do it. You know what I mean? Like I hate that mindset. Like although that might not necessarily be what's your job, at the end of the day, we work 24 hours, 7 days a week, so you actually do get paid to do that.
What do you guys thought on that?
I mean, it's hard.
Maybe so.
The most valuable thing was you have to make it fun because it's not funded. And if you make it fun, you can show the airmen that it's important, that it has a big impact, and that they'll in turn work harder and put their skills on display.
All right. I'm sure that there might be some divergence about that response, but we heard some things. I would love to call out also, remind me your name? Dustin and Anthony, Isaiah, John. We're all taking notes as we went. So it's a lot easier to answer these questions when you have something to review. Like, what did I write down? Well, everybody, where'd my thing go? It's turned around. Everybody writes. Don't let yourself fall into the lazy posture of like, oh yeah, great, we're going to listen to a guest speaker, and when am I going to actually get to work? If you're not taking notes, you're going to forget, right? So don't trust your attention. Be intentional about it. Who'd like to share something problematic? A problem or something? Yes.
That this is the most valuable and problematic at the same time. So innovators thrive on excitement and operators are tired. So that's the most problematic in a sense that you're right, like operators are tired, and like you said, you have to get buy-in from people in order for them to get excited to want to be able to innovate.
Does that track with you? Is that the problem that you encounter?
I would say the one thing that you need to tackle that with, and I think you're going to see in this course, is you've got to have a plan. You've got to be efficient, right? Because you are going to hopefully move that ball and make it fun over a very short amount of airwaves that you get. And you need to capture somebody's attention and then their heart and their mind with what you're doing. So when you've got something that you want to do, you don't necessarily look at resistance as, hey, that's bad command or that's bad leadership. You should know that it is going to be there in advance, and that to do your job, you have to have a good plan and a good message and articulate it well. At every level of innovation, I think that's important.
Yeah, so having precognitive ability, thinking about the reaction to your action, not just like, hey, I have a solution, but like the second and third order effects of what will the response to this action be from the environment. Biggest opportunity. Somebody. Morning.
I would say one of the opportunities that you spoke of, sir, was the FARP training, which is C-130, is taking risks, right? Having the courage to take the risk, to look at a new way of training, a new way of doing things, or a new way of deployment. Thank you.
At the airman level, that's super exciting. at the senior leadership level, that's not.
Right.
That's, that's scary. So, you've got to listen and kind of go, hey, I've got somebody that's excited, and I'm going to get a lot out of them if I can just move the ball a little on this concept. They're going to see something new. Even if we don't get it right, if we can find a way to plan for it enough to do it safely, it's valuable. So.
The most interesting opportunity I heard was the recognition that ACE doesn't scale. Or, I don't know if that's the statement, but it was reading between the lines that, like, man, the Air Force is looking for scalable solutions and nothing we did was scalable. Good job, or bring me the stuff that scales. Your weakness is not your strength. So we're used to this hub and spoke model where the strength is, man, logistics, and it just works. And and now we're creating a concept where that is not the plan. So why are we're still applying an old culture and logic to this new concept? Like, how do we break people of that? Or like our old strengths, we're the biggest, strongest guy on the block, maybe that's not gonna work anymore. We gotta be fast and, right, hide quickly and do, the reconstituting. How about momentum from this front group?
A mindset that you got to go with and just keep working on it, develop that, run with that. Don't let other people tell you what you should or shouldn't do. Just keep developing what you got.
At every level, somebody needs to ask for what they need. And they need to say, you know what, you told me, but I need to adapt. And like, I have some more important things that I want to leave them with, so don't stop me right now. That's important, right? You know what you need. In order to get momentum, you're gonna have to ask for stuff that isn't on the checklist. That's really important, right? So starving yourself of momentum because, man, this is what I was delivered, but that wasn't what I needed, right? Now we're gonna have to go into this uncomfortable place of building constructive conflict. Okay, here I want to leave you with this. The most important thing that I heard from General Sloane was one of the first things that he said. Does anybody want to try and guess what we have not talked about that he offered?
Priorities.
Priorities is a good guess.
We've been spoiled for the last 20 years.
Spoiled. What else did we hear?
Unlocking potential in people, maybe?
Unlocking the potential. So training and development. Maybe we're all here. He's excited that you're here. You're going to unlock something in yourself.
Operators are tired.
Me too. Kimberly.
Lack of resources.
Lack of resources.
Feeling the need for change.
Feeling the need.
Victims of our own success.
None of those is what I heard. So, this is why we have to write stuff down, right? We have to write down things that are valuable opportunities. The thing that he said was, call me anytime. None of you are used to having access to people who can help you that are right? Like, what is the power distance from retired general to wherever you are at in the hierarchy? The reason we're no rank, the reason that we're in this room is to get out of the hierarchical mindset and into what's the fastest way to solve this problem. And what kind of resources or support or perspective can I get if I just pay attention and write it down, right? I want to leave you with the anxiety that he said something really important and you didn't write it down and now it's gone. It's not really gone because you wrote the remarks down, but that means now I have to go do extra homework. I have to go read through the things that he said and try and find what were those hidden nuggets. So instead of that, and especially tomorrow, because you're going to start calling new people, we have to be better at paying attention. We have to get better at that. And part of that, it is, if you're tired, you can't do it. So that's the precursor step of all the things that you did say about how do we prepare ourselves, what's the training that we need, et cetera, et cetera. We're trying to give you some of those tools here. But man, wellness, sleep, health, all of those things are now, the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If we're not meeting those, it's going to be harder and harder to do those much more difficult things like collaborate with others, et cetera. General Sloane, thank you so much. You're welcome to stay. I know we have Jeff DeGraff on the line. We have until, he's going to have about 10 or 12 minutes to also chat with you, share some of his thoughts, and welcome us. And then we're going to take a short break, and if anybody wants to grab General Sloane before he departs, or trade emails or contact info, you'll have an opportunity to do that.
And I will leave this card here. It's got my phone number, my email, and just over the course of not just this week, but over the cohort and beyond, if there's a question that you have, you know, I'm passionate about this stuff. So I will leave that, and the best way probably is to just shoot me an email and tell me that you want to talk, and then we get on a phone conversation because it goes a lot quicker, and we can cover more things.
All right.